what has been recently announced as a 1.5 million grant from FIFA that will be given to the Philippine Football Federation to further our footballing programs, Chris. None of that will go to the building, right? None of that will go to the facility that we have in Carmona at the moment. But $500,000 is going to go to the women's game. That has already been allocated. But they don't know exactly what they're going to spend it on quite yet. They know that it's going to go to the women's game, which leaves $1 million for the men's game and the youth game. Now, all of which we don't know where it's going to go yet, right? But what we do have are assurances from the General Secretary, Ed Gastanes, that there will be no hanky-panky being done at the PFF. Welcome to Across the Line. Today, we've got another exciting football update for you here in the Philippines, and so many things have transpired over the last few weeks. Whereas it was doom and gloom just a month prior, today, it's all butterflies and roses. Chris, exciting times, start of training, new clubs, new rivals, new additions, so many things to speak about.
So many things to speak about. I think one of the most interesting things that you brought up, and obviously you're on the ground with this, is the protocols and all the things surrounding what teams have to go through in order to get to the training field, to get to the facility and actually participate in the session. So, you give us great insight into that. So that's great for the casual fans and the hardened fans to listen just what it takes to actually get the training up and running. Lots of stuff around the global situation, which I think still remains unresolved. And obviously we talk about the new team, Maharlika, the new boys to the league and what they bring to the table. Some familiar faces, some big names, household names in there. So yeah, really, really excited to start to gear up for this upcoming 2020 season.
And we take a look at UCFC, their new head coach, some of their new additions, some of those that have gone out as well. Take a look at maybe what are their chances like for this year. Does it change their tag as favorites in 2020? Also, there's been an injection of cash from FIFA. $1.5 million are being sent over to the PFF, and we indulge in a little bit of an exercise in how would you spend $1.5 million? We'd be happy to hear your thoughts on that as well. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. We surely did. It's been a lot of positivity to drown out some of the more difficult times during this quarantine period, and we hope you enjoy it. If you do, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, and we look forward to hearing from you on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. This is it, another football update on this Football Friday. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Massive day for Philippine football. What was once just a little glimmer at the end of the tunnel is finally a proper light, and we are walking right through it. First day of training today after 6 months away, sidelined because of the global pandemic. Finally, football is truly back, Chris, and what a feeling, just to be out there on the pitch today in Carmona, to see everybody back in regular programming, a real treat to see.
Yeah, so for those of you who are listening, they're not going to get the full picture, but for those of you who are watching this, they might see a little bit of a suntan on Jing Jamlang today. So, I'm going to let you talk us through it. What was it like? What did it look like today at training?
Yeah, first of all, extremely hot, 10 to 12 o'clock in Carmona. But the place has been redone a little bit. The lights are there. There's 2 additional small pitches behind the main pitch. And the whole idea is that you can only have 10 individuals on the pitch at one time. That's the beauty of Carmona, is that there are 3 pitches. So on each half, there is 5 players and 1 staff member or 2 staff members that are running stations. That's how Kaya did it anyway. And I believe how most of the teams will be doing it is ball work in one area, one is fitness, another area will be, close touches and juggling, the other will be passing. But essentially it's just everybody trying to figure themselves back out, find their fitness a little bit, find their touch again, and lots of smiling faces, but a lot of tired legs out there as well. Zoom sessions have been ongoing for 6 months, but being out there in the heat, being out there with the ball at your feet, and being able to really run properly, it takes its toll. And you could tell that everybody was absolutely gassed at the end of it, but there's no better feeling than getting back into the groove of things, especially since for a lot of the people who on that team, it's been their everyday life, not just for the last, few years, but their entire lives. They've been training every day for 9 months out of the year. And to have that taken away for 6 months has been really brutal for everyone. So the start of what should be 4 weeks of training before the start of the league. So very exciting times.
So talk me through this. So you've got the main pitch, so the pitch that everyone had been playing their games on in previous years, and then there's a small secondary pitch behind it.
Field. Yeah,
is that right? When was that built? I didn't even know that was being constructed.
Yeah, they started doing it last year. It was sort of like hidden because there was a lower area where you couldn't really see it. But now it's all done. They have it leveled almost to where the main pitch is at, and there's just a little cage that separates them. So 2 mini pitches. Yeah, so it's like maybe for small-sided games or just for technical drills, which they were utilized for. So when you enter the facility, you have to go through all of these like little health checks, right? You enter, your car gets sanitized first and foremost. You exit, you get your temperature taken, and you're forced to put in your details for a contact tracing form. Everybody is encouraged to use alcohol and to sanitize and make sure their hygiene is good. All the materials on the pitch have been previously sanitized with bleach, a bleach solution. So all the balls, all the cones, everything like that. It's up to you if you want to wear a mask or not. For those that are on the pitch. So all the staff members mostly were wearing masks. The players were not. But that is it. Everything is, all the players have been previously tested. So it's just a matter of making sure that everything, all the facilities, everything that you sit on, everything that you touch is also clean. And then afterwards.
And then with the actual field setup, so you're saying that there was 5 players on each half of the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then are you saying that the smaller fields adjacent to it, they're also being utilized for training as well?
Yes.
So you're getting about 20 of the players are working at any one time?
Right.
And so pretty much the full squad?
Full squad. An additional on the sideline doing just quick agility drills. So everybody was involved. Everybody got a chance to get out there and stretch the legs a little bit. And happily, no casualties. No. There was one casualty, but it was the PT. It was Jolo. So we're okay with the PTs getting hurt.
What did Jolo injure, just out of interest? How did he do that?
Hamstring. What I would call enthusiastic demonstrating. Overly enthusiastic demonstrating. Mm-hmm. So slight pull on the hammy, but he should be fine.
Who treats the PT?
I was telling him maybe you can self-medicate, bro, because
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But I mean, wow. I mean, we've been wondering when this was going to transpire. You know what I mean? It did not look good. The trends were not providing a lot of optimism as to when this was going to get started or if the league would even still be a possibility. But there's a stubborn nature with the folks at PFF and PFL, and you got to love them for it. They're really giving it a shot. And whilst other leagues have started and had to stop and had to restart, the PFL is running head on into what they hope will be an event-free next 4 weeks so that we can get started with this competition.
I think it's really interesting that a lot of the guys are able to participate in training, because one of the things that a lot of people were talking about was obviously working in these groups of 5 and weren't too sure kind of how that would work. But it seems as though some sort of carousel type a rotation was implemented to ensure that everyone managed to get some good time on the field. In terms of actually on the main pitch, then is it 40 minutes max? Is that correct? Is there like a window or time frame where they have to be limited in terms of how much training time they get on the field?
No, actually. The beautiful thing about Carmona is in the Calabarzon region, they are in MGCQ, right? So while Metro Manila is in GCQ, where only 5 players, in fact, are allowed on the pitch at any given time, MGCQ allows for 10 people on the pitch at any given time, and allows for 2-hour training sessions as long as there is no contact. So we were actually being a little bit liberal a while ago and having just 5 players per half. 10 players on the pitch, and then 5 on the smaller pitches and 1 on the outer area. So all protocols were observed, and this is how it's going to be for a little while. It's basically just going to be a ramping up process and ensuring that people get to a baseline of fitness before the start of the season.
And how does that tie in with the other clubs? Were they on before, afterwards? Like what does the slots look like?
So Stallion has carved out their own schedule. Most of them are based in Binyan, so it's a closer travel to them to go to Carmona. They've taken a 6:00 slot, so nobody has fought them on that one. So they can have the 6:00 slot, 6 to 8 every day of the week.
In Carmona.
In Carmona, right?
Yeah.
So Kaya is coming in and training at 10 to 12. United City FC is looking at training at around 2, I believe, 2:00. And then Maharlika just got their training schedules. And this one is a big piece of news as well that we need to speak about. Maharlika FC, a lot of rumblings, a lot of rumors, a lot of whispers over the last few weeks. Yesterday, it was announced that their license has been approved, provisionally anyway, which means they will be joining this season of the Philippines Football League. So a brand new club is joining the fray, and they were going to begin training hopefully in a couple of days. They're getting swabbed today. So interesting times for the PFL. Start of a new season in terms of training, and a new club that we can welcome in with a lot of familiar faces. Chris, you should know quite a bit about them.
Yeah, obviously they've been going on social media, announcing some of their signings. They've got some big names there. Obviously well established from their time with the national team, the likes of Misek Bahadoran. My brother has been announced there, Jerry Barbosa. So some people with national team experience, I think would certainly bolster that roster. They've got some experienced, players from back in the UFL, PFL days. People like Wako Kanyas has been announced. So, I think they've got an experienced lineup. I think they're probably looking to complement that with some youthful exuberance somewhere along the line. And I'm sure some of those signings will be announced. I think they've announced a couple of the young guys still in high school have announced that they're going to be joining their roster. So it'll be intriguing to see how they find that balance between youth and experience, and if they're able to find that right mix and blend. So, look, at the end of the day, it's important that we have enough teams to actually have a functioning league. So I think it's great that Anton has really worked diligently behind the scenes to ensure that all of the criteria is met in order to have a team in this competition. And then it's really, with the other teams that are in there, how can they perform at this level? I mean, with the experience that they've got, it would suggest that they might be okay, but maybe those aged legs might struggle in a condensed season. We'll have to wait and see. But irrespective of that, I think it's just great that they've got a team up and running, and it's exciting to have a new addition to this PFL season.
So a couple things about that Maharlika development, right? First of all, am I going to be expecting a video coming out soon where you're going to pull off a mask and say, "We are Maharlika FC"? Is that going to happen anytime soon, Chris?
I don't know. My brother's one was quite amusing, I thought, as far as announcements goes. I don't envisage that happening anytime soon, no. I'm feeling pretty fit.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't mind getting back and playing at some point. PFL, though, I'm not too sure. We'll have to wait and see. But, they are making big waves. They're making big announcements. I'm sure they've got more in the pipeline. Again, there was sort of that window of uncertainty where it was like, are they going to just continue with a sevens or be a sort of semi-professional team or whatever? But obviously, once they've got the paperwork in order, I think it's great that they're in the PFL. I'm sure more people will want to attach themselves to the roster now that they know they're going to be in the fully fledged league this season.
Yeah, which brings me to my second question. Do you think this is going to be a trend now? Anton Del Rosario, a man who was part of the original I wouldn't say the original, the group that made the miracle in Hanoi is now an owner of a professional football club playing in the top flight of the Philippines. Do you think more individuals such as Anton, people like yourself, perhaps, that will be moving in that direction and looking to own clubs?
I don't know. Well, we've had loads of people on the show, and they've talked about how they want to get involved with the domestic game. You know, we had Nate Berkey on the show last week, and we were talking about his excitement to want to get in on the coaching front. Obviously, I'm involved with the coaching side. Anton's been busy doing his Sevens League. So he's been very involved with the community. I think this is obviously a big step. And it's a very different proposition to, you know, playing, to managing a youth league, to managing an academy. This is a completely different entity. So I'll be intrigued to see how he does it. Obviously, you know, some of the parameters will probably need to be amended as they kind of move forward. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jing, they've got a temporary provisional license at the moment. So I don't really know what that entails. But obviously, in such a short period of time, it's going to be very difficult for them to adhere to all of the strict criteria that is necessary to be, you know, AFC standard with a lot of the things that you need to tick off in order to be a fully bona fide professional team. But yeah, like I said to you before, I just think it's great. I think it's great that he's got the passion and enthusiasm to want to continue to progress his footballing empire, really, because he's got loads of different things ongoing with the footballing world. And I think it's great that, you know, he's put his money where his mouth is. Because a lot of people had obviously said they want change, they want to get involved, but haven't really been willing to do so. So I think you know, fair play to Anton and his team. I know have worked really diligently in getting this Maharlika team up and running, and you know, I hope it does spur on more people to want to get involved. Obviously, there's a lot of cost issues involved. You know, I don't know the sort of the ins and outs of how he's funding the program, or whether people are getting you know, paid, or if they're getting big salaries, you know, comparable to some of these other clubs. But yeah, the main thing, as I said, is just that there's another opportunity for people to play in this league, which gives us the quota of teams necessary to have a fully fledged league, really.
From what I've seen on social media, I think Anton has come out and said nobody's getting paid. Everybody's going out there and playing for passion. So in terms of keeping the wage bill down, a masterstroke, right?
So how does that work though, Jing? Like with certain compliance issues. So for example, the UFL, I know, although they were paying their players, it was actually an amateur league. And then fast forward to the start of the PFL, one of the mandates was obviously that it was going to be a professional league, that everyone has a base salary, you know, a minimum level that everyone would need to be earning. Like, how does that tie in on that sort of side of things, the compliance side, based on the criteria that the PFL and probably the AFC outlined for all professional leagues? I
believe that's where the provisional sort of stature of their license falls into that. You know, it's they can tick off a certain number of boxes which the PFL deems as mandatory, and then the rest they're sort of glazing over and saying that we're going to suspend sort of these categories of your license in order for you to have the time to fill those necessary points, right? So whether it's maybe you need to get started with putting together your academy, maybe you have to put the groundwork in finding your community that you are going to ingrain yourself in, perhaps beginning with player contracts a year into your operation, things of that nature. Those are conversations that are taking place between Maharlika and Antonio in particular and his general manager, Troy Colansod, with the PFF and the PFL. So right now, as you said, it's the priority is getting the 6 into the league, right? And making sure that the league has an injection of vibrancy with Anton and the rest of the characters that he brings in, which we haven't mentioned. Daniel Matsunaga, of course, is their second foreigner. That is mainstream popularity being taken back into the football realm. It could bring more eyeballs into the game. So, as you mentioned, perhaps in terms of like having to go toe-to-toe with some of the best in the league and how much will their experience stack up in terms of when you weigh it with their fitness levels? It's all going to be interesting to see. But one thing is for sure is there's an interest. There's a, how are these guys going to do? You know what I mean? So anything that draws a little bit of like, I wonder how that's going to pan out. That kind of vibe to casual fans, that's got to be a positive for the league, right? So yeah, and it's going to be interesting as well to see. You know, Anton's got a lot of ideas about how to market a club and how they should be portrayed in the media, and they've got off to a great start. And of course, head coach, by the way, is Roxy Dorlas. So a young head coach that they've brought in alongside Manu Mariano, Julian Del Valle, and Enrique Ortiz, all young kids. So I don't know, you know, the sky's the limit for them. We will see how things transpire. A little interesting note though, with the quarantine measures that are in play right now, I understand that 18-year-olds are not supposed to be outside, or if you're under 18, you're not supposed to be outside of your household alongside like senior citizens, right? Senior citizens and the young ones are supposed to be kept indoors while the young adults or the adults are allowed to go out. So some of these 17-year-olds, I don't know what the rule is going to be.
I'm sure they'll get special dispensation for that. I'm sure if there is some sort of waiver, then I'm pretty sure they'll be able to engage in that kind of activity. And I'm all for it, to be honest with you, Jing. Like, I think if as long as the safety measures are there, that they're in place, you know, I think that's a really critical age group, you know, that sort of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. I think the league is probably going to be watered down to a degree versus how it has been over the past 3-4 years, maybe. So I think some of those kids are able to step into that breach and compete and not be out of depth, or certainly be comparable to some of the to the players in some of the other teams. So you know, I know some of the young kids that have been sniffing around clubs and potentially looking to get games at the PFL level, and they're more than capable. So I think it's exciting that these kids are going to get the platform and the opportunity to play at this level, because it would be a shame for them to not have any football over the course of this whole 2020 season, because that's what it looks like for the majority of kids. And I'm looking sort of globally. You know, most countries are back up and running with their youth sports programs. Football in particular have done a great job globally of managing the process of reintegration back into normal sports and competition. So yeah, for me, I think as long as there's a waiver in place and the kids are capable of playing, it's not a physically there isn't a disparity there, and they're capable of playing at that level. I'm all for them playing in this competition for sure.
Twice you used the word in a previous sentence. I don't know if that was subliminal messaging for me, but you used the word globally twice, and that kind of ties in nicely over to the reason why Maharlika FC is in the league, because one slot was taken out, a slot which they filled. That slot was Globals. Now, Globals, the last time we spoke on this podcast, were in a bit of turmoil, and the PFL had taken a hard stance on them and decided that, listen, guys, you have a certain number of days to figure out your affairs, all right? And if you don't figure out your affairs, there will be consequences. That was the messaging from the PFL, and the consequences that you're out of the PFL. And quite recently, the PFF, so the league had spoken, kicked them out of the league. Now the federation has spoken and said that we had agreed with the PFL's method of disciplining you. And now we're stepping in to say that if you do not fix all these wage issues in the next 90 days, we will revoke your license completely. Right now, it is suspended. And Global have 90 days to figure things out, to either appeal the decision, to argue their case, or show evidence that they've fixed all of their wrongdoings. If none of these things transpire in the next 90 days, we may very well say goodbye to a mainstay in Philippine club football over the last decade. Not only a mainstay, but a pillar. How many trophies have they picked up over the last few years? We're losing a fantastic club. And it's a real shame that they're going out like this, Chris.
So what's the current situation? Because I know when this initially was announced, it must have been about a month ago, they gave them a window where they had to, they had certain criteria that had to meet.
Yeah.
Has anything changed since then? There hasn't really been any murmurs. There hasn't been really any news that have come out of any platform. No one from the club has spoken out. So has there been any developments whatsoever since that initial call to action from the PFL and from the federation?
I'm afraid not. I'm afraid there was more of the same. There were promises made. And it seemed like, okay, this is it. All right, our hands are up. We're really going to take the money out now. But then it was another like, we promise you this. And when the day comes that I'm supposed to provide you that money, everything gets a bit slippery, right? So that's been the case. And I'm not even sure if Saya Graphics has been paid. He said that, that the settlement was going to come already and all of that, but I don't know if it actually pushed through. So there's a lot of sketchiness in that department, and even the new owners are saying that it's not their responsibility, that these things should be placed. We're not the ones who should be paying these people. It should be the previous set of owners. The previous owners are saying it's the new owners, and the new owners are saying we're not even the real owners yet. Things of that nature are being thrown around, and you don't really know what the story is. You know what I mean? But you feel bad about everybody who's been collateral damage throughout this saga. So what we do know, and that is a fact, they're not going to be a part of this 2020 PFL. So yeah, Global is on the verge, and we could be losing two great clubs in the span of a few months, right? Ceres Negros being the other one, who, if you look at the last 10 years of clubs that have won championships, they've won the last 3 Philippines football leagues, and they have a UFL under their belt as well, right? That club is gone. That club is now UCFC, and they've been making waves as well, Chris. They've released their entire roster. They've released their new kit. They've announced their new head coach and their new goalkeeper. So a lot of things to talk about with UCFC, and they are the title favorites, given that they're basically a mainstay of Ceres Negros, who have dominated the league over the last 3 years. But there's a little bit of a change, right? I mean, they changed the head coach, which is huge. No more Risto, Trevor Morgan in his place, English gentleman, a bit older than their previous coach. He is 63 with plenty of experience, both coaching and playing. And their defense in particular has had a change in makeup, right? No more Super Herrera. In goal, no more Roland Mueller, right? You got Anthony Pinthas in his place. And they've picked up some young guys in Jordan Jarvis, Miggy Clarino. Jarella Ristorenas is back. So this is the club that they've decided. No more Junior Munoz, right? No more Carly DeMurga is out of the picture. And that's it. So there's a little bit of a shakeup. And what do you think so far of the initial impressions that UCFC has been putting?
Well, I mean, you're painting this picture where they're fallible. They could be got at now with these individuals. I think you failed to mention that they've got their full arsenal of attacking prowess in position. Mendy's there, OJ's there, Bienve's there, Shoki's there. James Young Husband has obviously moved on, but I mean, in terms of their firepower, still by far and away the best front line.
They have a couple of these players, Manny and Mike.
Yeah, the Odd brothers, I think, traditionally have done okay in this league. So I think they're going to have the creative spark still there. Listen, Jing, let's
Takashi, you got
Takashi Adewale. Listen, they've still got so many quality players, Jing. Like you can spin it how you want, mate. I know you may be looking at it from your kayak glasses, but they have still got some absolute top level players. And in someone like Trevor Morgan, I don't know the guy. Obviously done a bit of digging and a bit of research. He said he's been very experienced, spent a lot of time in Asia. Formerly in the Indian leagues, done very well there. I think his most recent stint was with was it the Nepalese national team or Bhutan national team, which was a little ill-fated. But I mean, he's coming in. He's got a star-studded roster to play with. Anthony Pintus as a goalkeeping replacement, I still think, again, his pedigree is pretty good. Haven't really seen too much of him other than what we saw back in the last year SEA Games, but I still can't see past them, to be honest with you, mate. It's what we alluded to in the previous podcast. We were saying that, is having a condensed season going to be beneficial to the other teams in this league? I said potentially. Obviously, if there is a slip up, there's fewer games for them to kind of make up the difference. But I just feel like those guys keep themselves in tip-top shape. Shoki's on vacation. He still looks like he's 25, in absolute, top physical shape. So, yeah, I just still think that barring any sort of catastrophic implosions, I just feel as though they've got too much firepower for the rest of this league. I think maybe you'll be able to talk about this a little bit later on about some of the people that Kaya brought in. I still think they're going to be maybe the closest competitor. Stallions, obviously, they're going to be a formidable opponent, like they always are. Hardworking, industrious. Ernie does a good job, runs a tight ship. But I think if we're really looking at this objectively, I just think that they're the type of team keep themselves in tip-top shape. Professionalism off the charts for this league. I just think they're going to hit the ground running, and they're going to be a very tough juggernaut to stop.
Yep, I agree with you on all counts, except for the fact that depth is going to be a big part this season. I think fitness is going to become a problem. I think 5 substitutions in a match now because of the whole COVID situation.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. So I think there will be a lot more shuffling that will be allowed, which kind of changes the dynamic of the game, right? I mean, when you look at the back line of Dennis Villanueva, Sean Kane, and Joshua Dutosme, and Angelo Marasigan, which is going to be their back line now, right? I think Dennis is perhaps the most seasoned. Sean really came into his own last year. So did Joshua Dutosme. Marasigan was a backup. And he was a backup to Junior Munoz, who was a great player for them, a really effective player for them. Now, Marasigan was a reliable backup, but what if Marasigan or any of that back four gets hurt? Who's in there? Joran Jarvis, Miggy Clarino, Arnie Pasinabo is being listed as a defender. Do they have enough if somebody gets hurt? Now, that's the question mark for me, right?
Yeah, we saw Takashi Odawara play at the back, didn't we, for JPV. He's obviously done a few stints as a reliever in there before.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably the most versatile player, I would say, in the league. And he has been doing, that utility man role for a number of years. So, if he's going to go in and plug into that position, he's more than adept at playing in that spot.
Agreed.
Robert Lopez Mendy was a centre-back back in the day with Archers. I'm sure he'd love to play back there. In training on occasions, he would jump in at centre-back and be this sort of sweeper, Franco Baresi type. That's what he thought. But I had him more like a Marcel Desailly. But I'm thinking he's probably going to stay a striker. So while I think maybe they might be a little bit light, and I agree with you that sort of rotation is going to take its toll. But I'm sure they'll find a way. I mean, even those players that you mentioned there, Dennis Villanueva, national team caliber, Sean Kane, national team caliber. Yep. We're not talking about upstarts who have no experience. Even the likes of Jordan Jarvis has played in the league for a number of years, plenty of experience. And Angelo Marasigan as a backup, not bad.
Sure.
Not a bad option. So, I see where you're coming from.
All I'm saying is, if you're a contender this year, these are the things that you're looking at and are motivating you to be like, maybe this is our shot, right? These guys have been almost unbeatable. We beat them maybe once or twice over the course of 3 seasons. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is a chance, right? So I'm sure more than a few players are licking their lips about the prospects of playing a team that is perhaps haven't had an opportunity to really come together. They got a new coach, a different back line. These are all things that I'm sure these are exciting things to think about when you are Jovan Bidik or Kenshiro Daniels or whoever is going to be leading the front line, because that is a huge question mark for Kaya. Who knows, right? Takume Osato has gone back to Japan. Mm-hmm. So has Connor Takani. I mean, well, he didn't go back to Japan. He went to England.
I was going to say, whoa. I mean, what's going on with Connor? him and Yusato got some sort of special arrangement in Japan or something.
Connor's back in his hometown, so I believe he's going to go back to working a normal job. Actually, he's been offered a little gig by his family member. So Connor has decided to return home and to focus on things other than football, which is perfectly reasonable at an uncertain time like this, you know. So those are two key pieces of the Kaya squad that have departed. The question now is, who comes in, right? We know that the budgets are not going to allow for a high-profile player to come in out of the blue. Where, I mean, if a high-profile player does come, then that person is going to have to take some real considerations about how they're going to get compensated, right? So who knows? I know that there are spots available, and I've heard some rumors, right? Interesting, exciting players that could come in and fill a role. But again, these are discussions that need to be made with management and players to decide whether or not compensation can be agreed. But should certain discussions go in a positive direction, there could be some very interesting and exciting news to be had on the fronts of Kaya. But that is all that I can say for the time being, unfortunately.
That's poor. That's poor. Yeah. I mean, you're just getting everyone excited. You know, you're a bit of a tease, to be honest with you.
I know.
I'm not happy with this. I think I should be giving us an exclusive, but I'll have to respect your tight lips here, and we'll eagerly anticipate an announcement hopefully soon. But that's exciting news. That's exciting news. Let's see what happens. Let's watch your space, and you know, when you announce it, hopefully it will be as salacious as you're making it out to be. So
if it pans out, I'm telling you, you're going to be licking your lips as well, right? But one thing that I did notice a while ago at the PFF National Training Center was how exciting this place could be for Philippine football down the road. You know, you've got the 3 pitches, you've got the lights up. They've got a new building that they're looking to break ground on sometime soon. They were supposed to do it in March, but it got delayed because of the pandemic. But they've got a whole building, 4-floor building that they're going to put together with dormitories, the gym, the works for individuals, hopefully youth teams that will be housed there to prepare for national team or international tournaments. All of which the budget will not come from what has been recently announced as a 1.5 million grant from FIFA that will be given to the Philippine Football Federation to further our footballing programs, Chris. None of that will go to the building, right? None of that will go to the facility that we have in Carmona at the moment. But $500,000 is going to go to the women's game. That has already been allocated. But they don't know exactly what they're going to spend it on quite yet. They know that it's going to go to the women's game, which leaves $1 million for the men's game and the youth game. Now, all of which we don't know where it's going to go yet, right? But what we do have are assurances from the General Secretary, Ed Gastanes, that there will be no hanky-panky being done at the PFF, right? He has pointed out that he nor the president, Mariano Araneta, receive any sort of compensation for their roles in the PFF, and that everything is above board, and that FIFA is going to be very strict about where this money goes, right? So they're going to have to write up proposals and showcase where exactly these programs or where the money, to which programs this money is going to go. So I'd like to ask you, Chris, there's money flowing in to the Federation. Now, the news article that I read actually was stating that this is the type of money that no other federation around the world gets, or in the Philippines for that matter specifically. We don't get any sort of international dispensation that allows you to be like, hey, here's some money, make the sport greater in your neck of the woods. Nobody does that, right? Not basketball, not taekwondo, not anything. But football is rare in that it has more members than even Olympic committees around the world. That's how ingrained FIFA is. And they're just going to give you 1.5 million. Now, if I gave you $1 million, Chris, to spend on Philippine football, where would you put that money?
we should have talked about this before, Jing, and I would have come up with a plan. You put me on the spot here a little bit. Look,
what would you like to see it go?
Oh, mate, listen. Again, we talked about so many different things on this podcast, and we've talked about our sort of disappointment with the lack of programs, the lack of initiatives that are out there. And this across the board, Jing, we're not just talking about youth or adult programs. Like there's just so many different things that need funding, that don't get funding. And you talk about misappropriation there, and obviously, you know, people can say, oh, there's no whatever. But, you know, there is, like you said, if there's never been this type of injection before, well, there has been initiatives that have been funded by FIFA. There has been money that's come to the federation. And listen, maybe that they're just not great at publicising it. I really don't know, but who was involved in grassroots football, specifically in the Metro, haven't seen that many initiatives that are out there in the public eye. Certainly not in this sort of region. So that's why I was met with a lot of skepticism when you made that comment. The other day was after I spoke with Nate. I wrote down a bunch of stuff, and it took me 10 minutes to write down what I would do in terms of, actually not to do with the money. I didn't even know that until you mentioned it to me yesterday. But what were some of the things that I would look to do? And one of the things I think that needs to happen is, and this is my opinion, I think we're in a really unique position right now where we can effectively restart everything. So we're in a pandemic, right? So we've got time. We've got time to implement things. We've got time to write things up, work on its implementation. You know, commit it to paper. Really sort of map out a very clear and distinct pathway that we want everyone to go on. And if it was I would try to break it down into different facets. So from the youth's perspective, I would try to implement a very wholesale change for how we play the youth game. I would start off by doing it per age group. So I would make sure that it isn't paired in every other year group. So at the moment, everything's done U7, U9, U11, U13, 15, 17, 19, so on. For me, that creates this void, this sort of vacuum in each alternate year, where kids specifically that are born at the back end of the year, they're just lost in that mix, because that's too great of an age gap to try to bridge that disparity. So I would mandate that teams do it in every single year group. I would then look at completely restructuring the format. So I would start as young as U6, and I would start at 2v2. So U6, I'd have it at 2v2. At U7, I would have it at 3v3. U8, I would have it 4v4. U9, 5v5. So on and so forth, right? All the way up. I wouldn't even have 11-a-side at U13. I would keep it at, I'm trying to work out how incremental this is. I think I had it at 9v9 at U13 or U12 at U13. Because there's a couple of things that I've noticed with the Philippines, which is they struggle to formulate teams at the 11-a-side level for whatever reason. One of my theories is that kids just don't participate enough in the younger age group, so they lose interest as they get further forward, because the emphasis is upon winning. There's a great disparity between the really good teams and the poor teams, and you're having to play against each other. It doesn't make sense, and you beat teams 15-0. You know, so the best teams are unhappy because they're winning by a huge margin. The weaker teams are missing out because they get killed every week. So people lose interest, and they invariably go to other pursuits. So I would try to sort of manage that process a little bit more. And I think from a developmental standpoint, it makes sense, because you're not sort of jumping from, you know, I was six years old playing 5v5. Then the following year, I'm turning 7. I'm playing U9. I'm having to play 7v7 against kids that are, you know, January born 9-year-olds, you know, and I'm still this, you know, 7-year-old stuck in a 5-year-old's body, or whatever it might be relative to your biological age. So I think that was one of the things I would look, just completely wholesale, change the format and roll it out across all federations. Say, look, this is what you have to do. Infiltrate that with all of the regional FAs. Say, look, mandate it. This is what you have to do. These are and if you can't do it every year, I understand the age group. I understand that's fine, but you have to follow the format, because I think one of the things that we have to do is really streamline how we go about our technical development of the players. From there, what I would mandate is every other year in the beginning, you have a regional competition. So you could have, your league format that runs year round. I think that has to be a mandate also, that the teams compete year round. And then from there, you would have a regional competition that you run every other age group. So, that could be U7 and Unite in the format that we've already suggested. And then from there, it will converge on a regional championship. Then it goes through into, your Visayas, Mindanao, Luzon championship. And then we converge on one every year. Go to Carmona if that's your facility, and you all have a national championship every year. Yeah. From there, you'll obviously have your ID pools, so you'll be easily identifying, like, okay, that's a player for the future. That's a player for the future. That's someone we should try to keep tabs on. Little undersized at the moment, but technically very good. So maybe not for now, but maybe for a few years later. And you can really start to have this talent ID of all of the best players that you've got in the Philippines. And that's how you would then start to amalgamate as you get into your U13s, 15, 17s for your youth national team pools. I think that's something that really needs to be structured, and needs to be harnessed, and needs to be formulated and followed. And then from there, you can tier your regional FAs. So, if the NCR are compliant, they're doing everything, they've got all of their associate members participating in this competition, they've got X amount of members playing, your gold star association, bang, here's your funding. This is your funding. And obviously it's tiered based on the criteria that's met by each individual association. Have it also then audited by an independent governing body. So it can't be from someone from the federation, because you know what will happen. You do a favour for a friend. They give you the gold standard when you're not the gold standard, and then obviously that all then becomes very wishy-washy. No. I think the same has to be done for clubs. So I think there needs to be some funding going to the clubs. So the same again, then you tier the system, gold, silver, bronze, or whatever it might be. And then obviously they get funding, allocated funding in accordance to that. So I think now you're starting to have this system where it is financially viable for you to try to put funds into your program, to develop your coaches, to develop your teams, to meet certain criteria, because you know that there is going to be money allocated to you if you're compliant with some of these stringent requirements that the federation will map out. And I think that's key, because if it's not a system like it is in the UK, where people are volunteer coaches and they're willing to go and spend time to do it. It just isn't. There isn't that type of environment. So you're going to have to really try to find a way to monetize the federations, monetize the clubs, to want to do these things, to reach this particular standard. But as long as those funding is accordance to that, then I think people will be willing to do it. I think, and then it also will benefit those organisations that already have those structures in place. It'll be pretty easy for them to go up there and do those things. I think that's really important, because there is no pipeline right now, Jing, and we really drastically need to invest in that pipeline. And I think that's one way in which we should go about doing it. Any thoughts on that? Because I have some other stuff, but that was the main bulk of what I was trying to get at with the youth sector.
Very, very interesting. Because the way I'm thinking about it is, all right, you get 1.5 million, right? When do you get 1.5 million again, right? Which means if you're going to throw it down into programs or implementations of certain things that are one time, big time, then it's a waste of money, right? You're going to throw it into a drain, essentially, for a brief moment in time, whereas you could use it as a startup investment into what you were saying, which is going to be a catch basin for all the talent throughout the entire country. And not only are you catching all the talent, you are nurturing all the talent, because you are providing them with the competitions required, right? So the competition is there as the test to see the good coaches, the good referees, the good players, the good organizers. You're going to be able to see everybody perform to the level that they need to, right? This is where they're going to get tested. But there's also going to be the nurturing process of it, which means that there has to be good coaching done at the youth level, which means it involves the youth section, youth department in the PFF, right? Grassroots and youth development department. But it also involves the technical department, because the technical department is responsible for what kind of game do we want to be espousing to those in our youth at the moment, right? What kind of style of play? What kind of things are we encouraging as for coaches, right? We should also be pushing a sort of style of play, a level of performance that we want to see from a technical standpoint, right? So that's the grassroots and the technical. And then you have your competitions department, which is responsible for actually setting up all of these competitions in a, how should you say, they can mandate it so that there's a particular standard for all, right?
Standard field, standard, protocol, standard, amount of how far back are the parents, all of that stuff, standardize it. That's actually the word that I used when I wrote it down. Standardize the whole format, everything.
So if you are able to get the right people in those three departments to collaborate together in order to roll out a new national program that has all of these regional competitions, youth setups, and a technical curriculum that has been rolled out as well, man, in 5 years' time, you're going to be reaping the benefits of a lot more organized way of catching talent. And talent that will, if you do it this way, will not end up in the traditional areas where they end up. Like all top talent end up in the big schools, playing in the same competitions, playing a limited amount of matches per year. All of those things will be changed drastically if you're playing year-round since you were 7, right? By the time you're 13, imagine if you're playing year in, year out, you're 13 to 18. Once the time you hit college, are you going to say, okay, now you get to go to play in the UAAP where you're going to play a double round robin? So what do you mean? Like, I'm going to play 14 games? That's it? That's my main season for the year? This is the top of the mountain? Nah. No. I've been playing 20 plus games every year since I was 13. You got to give me something better than that. So hopefully we create those types of individuals who are going to be bored by the prospect of playing 14 matches in subpar level of play. So that would be amazing, man. Honestly, if you could use that money, because competitions also, if you do it correctly, are not supposed to be drains, right? They're not supposed to be where money goes to die. There's supposed to be money coming back in, because especially if you do it in this manner where the community is really involved, then there's a reason for local businessmen to be like, yeah, I want to sponsor this, right? My kid plays in this. I know everybody on a weekend comes out here. Why not have some brand recognition here as well, right? Support my community. I think that way there's money coming back into the competitions, and some of these things could be self-sustained operations for many, many years. And that's what you hope this injection of 1.5 billion does, like an upstart for something that could be more long-term. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, like for me, it's really important that you fertilize the ground. Do you know what I mean? Like I think you hit the nail on the head. If you go and build a facility, okay, it's great, but it's just there. It's not going to be necessarily a breeding ground for development. If you invest in 100 coaches, those 100 coaches, they're going to coach 100 kids. And those 100 kids there might be 1, there might be 10, there might be 50 really good players that come out of that. The tutelage of that one coach, and then it just becomes, like I said, it exponentially will develop. And I think it's really important that you use that if that is that type of money that's going to be involved, that you use it to try to develop something that's going to be long term and it's going to be sustainable and it's going to be there for growth. And then that money, that $1 million or whatever it is that is allocated to that, it comes back. It comes back in spades, and it might not come back in physical cash, but it comes back in human capital. It comes back in players that are going to play for the national team. It comes back in players that are going to go and play abroad and develop, for the national team down the road. So I mean, there's loads of other things that I put in there. I think the importance of developing futsal, because I think that's a massive, massive one. There's just so many fields, courts that are underutilized that could be there to forge that, again, that type of dynamic that we're looking for within the Filipino player. Very technical, very fast-paced, and the facilities are there to develop that. That was another one that I put down. I think that's really important. Everyone probably has a different perspective on things, Jing. Everyone probably has a different idea on how the money should be allocated. People probably think I'm talking about the youth game because that's the space that I work in the most. I'm sure people who work with the national team are going to want that money to be allocated to the national team. People who work within women's football, obviously they're going to want more money to be invested in that. There's so many projects that it could be allocated to. But I just think for the long-term development of the game, the benefit of football here in the Philippines, it can just go so far. It can go so far in terms of developing a long-term, more sustainable program for kids here in this country.
Very recently, I was able to watch a futsal game, open air court. I haven't watched a casual game in so long, Chris. It's been so long. And just to watch these guys play, it brought back the feeling of what it was when you were younger. You know what I mean? Like, why did I enjoy football so much? It's just like they're figuring it out. They're problem solving, trying to figure out how to get through the spaces without like proper coaching or the pressures of having to win or lose. You know what I mean? And it was a lot of joy watching these guys play. And there's got to be something to that. There's got to be facilities where people can express themselves freely without thinking about whether it's right or wrong what they're doing, right? Without the coaching environment involved. And free play is going to be difficult without the proper facilities. And I think, you're probably right in that. Futsal is going to be tremendous for spreading just sort of like your passion for football and for the game in general, right?
It's funny that you said that, because the other thing that I really wanted to incorporate was actually a more social element to football. Like, Anton's doing a great job at trying to develop that sort of social environment, but it's still within quite a competitive league. It's still within a league. Like, when we had Louis Clark on the show, I think he was talking about it. Like, where is the veterans league? There are a couple of pockets of that. I mean, the WFL used to do a really good job with that, Jing. They used to do a nice job with that with the elderly guys. And I think, if I'm 50 years old, I don't want to play against the 25-year-old who's going to try to run around and still thinks he's got a chance of making it. So, I want to try and have it with people of similar age, similar physical capability, if that makes sense, and just play at that level. Louis talks about walking football. It's huge in the UK. Where's disability football? I don't see kids with disabilities playing football here. Like deaf football is a huge one in the UK. A guy I actually played with, played on the England deaf team. He was phenomenal. He was an unbelievable player. I mean, the only problem was he was a striker, but he would get caught. If he was called offside, like he wouldn't know. You know what I mean? So like we used to be mean and play tricks on him at training and pretend that he was offside. But it's football is. It's so all-encompassing. Do you know what I mean? There's so many different avenues that you could create through football. So this is, I think the main focus should be on youth. It should always be, because I think that's going to create a pipeline for people to enjoy the game for, throughout the rest of their lives. But I think investing in some of these other pockets, I think that would be really good also. Like I said, a veterans leagues, the veterans games, walking games, disability games. Obviously, we talk about the women's game. Obviously, it's going to get a huge boost, which I think is important. But I think there's definitely a missed opportunity in trying to help some of the more peripheral, casual football players, football fans to engage in that type of activity. I think that'd be really good also.
Yeah, for sure. And for the women, I'm a little bit split. I want to see a women's professional game, because I feel like there's so many great talent out there that they don't have anywhere to go. You know what I mean? They have nowhere to really express themselves anymore, and to provide a great opportunity for people to get excited for something after their careers are done. But at the same time, why don't we just start from where we want to start with the men's game and the youth game, like get the women involved at a very young age in the game. That too is in the opposite end of the spectrum. But personally, I'd like to see a professional game going, because I feel like there's so many opportunities out there for the women's game, especially since we look at them and they have the better shot of making it to the World Cup. If you make it to the World Cup, then that's an explosion that you'd want to be able to capture at a professional level. So, yeah, I mean, there's that money that could go there. So, I mean, yeah, it's nice to daydream and think about these things, because in my mind, I feel as if people are quick to criticize how things are. But if you ask them how you would want things to be if you were in their place, they don't have an answer. You know what I mean? So it's nice that you had your ideas and to be able to throw it out there, because, yeah, you need individuals with a bit of vision, not just people who are going to take a seat and do the same thing that the previous person did to them and just try to do it better. It's not enough. It's not going to be good enough, right? If you want drastic change, you have to make drastic change. And I think there's got to be a shift in the mindset as to maybe we need a visionary, you know? We need somebody who's going to lay it out and do things a little bit differently, so we can have sort of the progress that we've been hoping for over the last 10 years. But man, from the doom and gloom of a month ago to being here now in September, the league could start. There's money flowing into the game. There's a new football club, new individuals and new characters that we need to familiarize ourselves with UCFC, Maharlika, and all of that. Who would have thought, man, that it's going to be quite exciting here at the start of September? We're in the Burr months. Half the year has flown by, Chris.
Yeah, two-thirds of the year gone. What my hope now, Jing, really is that we're on the cusp now of obviously getting back to playing. And I really hope that nothing kind of derails us now as we go through. Because, again, we said this before, right? It only takes one positive case, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, the situation there becomes difficult to even get the games up and running. So I think it's a really positive step, and we're moving in the right direction. But, you know, we've seen, I think it's Vietnam, again, have experienced a couple of spikes, and they've said that they're unsure about how some of the AFC competitions are going to take place in Vietnam. So, you know, how, you know, the whole landscape of football is going to develop over the next month or two will remain to be seen. It's a really exciting time, and we're starting to make steady progress. I hope we can just continue this, so we can finally get the league started, and we can finally actually get, you know, some action on the pitch, because we've been waiting all year for it, and it's been a long and bumpy road, mate. So hopefully that there are no more bumps in the road. We can just go full steam ahead and get this league up and running for 2020.
The exciting thing as well, Chris, is that there is a lot of attention being placed on the league from media. There's nothing else to cover. There's nothing going on. And here's this league that is going against the grain, and they're ahead of the pack, right? The PBA is just about to get started as well. They're going to maybe begin scrimmaging middle of this month. So the top league in the country is the PBA. They have been the most recognized league over the last few decades. The PFL is right there in terms of their capability to operate within these rigid guidelines that you need to be able to meet in order to have a professional league going. So kudos to the PFL and the Federation for making this possible. We had no idea the amount of things, the protocols that you needed to write and submit and go through these things with the GAB and IATF. That's over our heads, but they made it happen quickly. So here we are. And if we do it correctly, all the eyes are on the league. And it's an opportunity to make a first impression to a lot of people and a reintroduction to a lot of people who perhaps have not been too excited about how the PFL has been run over the last 3 years. So here we go, 2020, football is back, and lots going on in the world of Philippine football. If you enjoyed this episode, this little update of how things are going here in the Philippines, then we do encourage you to subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. And as usual, we look forward to having you back here with us next week on the next Football Friday. Thanks for watching.